Hey, what's up guys? This is Oakley. I'm going to be playing as Macedon against the Iceni. Here you can see I have a bunch of foot companions, some thorough swordsmen, and I'm going to have 5 cavalry, I believe. My deployment is going to be as follows. On the left, I'm going to have a flanking component of companions. In the middle, I've interspersed, slingers at the front, and then I've interspersed the thorax swordsmen with foot companions. So kind of alternating between elite and cheap units. I feel like my goal here was to have some units that would sort of fill in the gaps, and then the elite units would provide a bit more stability. And on the right flank, I have some more hidden cavalry. So my opponent here has actually brought 8 units of these cavalry. 2 of them are going to be veteran riders, and 2 are heroic nobles on each flank. So he's gone for a very, very heavy cav contingent, a lot of these. And in the center, he has some, on the right, or on his left, I should say, are going to be more of these heavy cavalry, and then more heroic nobles in the center. These are going to be very veteran foot soldiers, backed up by Britain skirmishers. So he's gone for a very veteran heavy build, and definitely a lot of cavalry, which is going to be a pretty good counter to Macedon, which otherwise has some of the best cavalry in the game. Anyways, I'm moving at my troops here. My slingers are going to be very important. They're going to be holding down the center and trying to pick off his forces as best as possible. The reason I intersperse my spears and my cheap units as well is because my spears will provide maximal coverage in case of a cav attack. So, no matter where he strikes, I'll be able to ward them off. So this is going to be particularly important if you're fighting an opponent such as this one who has a lot of cavalry. So you want to make sure you're able to put your spears not only in the front, but also in the sides and in the back. So yeah, I have my cavalry over on the right side staying hidden, and I can see he's going to definitely go for an envelopment with all his forces, and if I turn too many of my forces around, then he's going to deploy his center body and try and crush through a weakened first line. So I'm kind of going to let him proceed with his plan, because at this point he doesn't know that I have my hidden cav components, so I figure, I'll be able to do well enough against his cavalry. I know he outnumbers me, but I figured because I have hidden units and because I have spears in the middle, I'll be able to make something happen. So I'm waiting for his units to get in range of my slingers, and I'm going to tell them to hold fire for the moment until I'm ready. I'm redeploying my spears, 2 in the front, 2 to face the sides, and then 1 in the center is not exactly in the very front in case I need to move them to the back. So he spots 2 of my hidden companions here, and they're going to be moving to the side. So he's going to keep these guys going on an encircling run. And yeah, he's basically just trying to secure the sides and threaten my flanks. So what I do is decide to pull these guys across, and my goal here is actually to try and help these guys out, because I figure, if I have 3 against 4 of his units here with 2 reinforcing, I should be good enough. And in the meantime, if his other units on the far left try and reinforce, well, then I'll go ahead and send reinforcements. So as he spots my troops here, I'm going to send in my Aspis cavalry and my companion cavalry against his troops. His troops are actually pretty strong, so these guys are going to be charging forward, and they're actually going to have some projectiles that they're able to use on the charge. So all of us are relatively heavily armored and heavily upgraded troops, so we're not going to do too much damage against each other. So instead of deploying all my forces right away, I have 2 to hold the line, and then I'm going to send 1 around the side to flank them. And I was kind of surprised. Usually in Shogun 2 this is a winning technique and it'll knock them out, but when I checked the casualty figures on his men, he basically didn't lose anything from that flank attack, so I was kind of pissed at that. But then again, I played this game before I left for this weekend. Actually, why I didn't upload is because I was in New York. So this was a battle I played before, and I'm pretty sure the outcome was a little different than it was. But again, I've heard the replays do kind of fuck up some stats, so that might not be as accurate as possible. Anyways, in the center, what I'm doing is I'm deploying my cheap units here first. I know his heroic nobles are going to be very, very hard to beat, so I'm going to try and tire them out with some swordsmen. And I also have to keep my spears in the back in case his cavalry try and have some funny business. So I'm going to start moving some of my spears up, and then also here you can see I'm sending in some foot companions to help out with the fight. Now I've disengaged 1 of my cavalry units from the cav fight. Figured they'll be more useful in turning the battle here. So seeing that his general is going to pop like a rally, and then I'm going to try and move in my foot companions here, hold down his forces as I move in with my cav. Now his forces here, I had to hold them off. I diverted 1 of my companion cavalry to basically fight my opponent back, hold him off so that he couldn't rout my blob of cavalry. And at the same time, I'm going to pin him down and send in my spears here. Again, I was kind of surprised that they did not do that much damage. Like I said, in Shogun, when you hold down cavalry and you get them with spears in the side, like that, they tend to rout. As you can see here, his heroic nobles have lost basically no men except for those that lost men in the initial charge, but the ones I flanked with that additional cav units have not lost too many men. So I'm still kind of surprised and taken aback by some of the mechanics in Rome 2. It's something I gotta get used to. But anyways, in this fight here, his units have crushed through my first line of cheap spears, but that's fine. His heroic nobles, as you can see here, are winded, and that's when he's going to have to fight against my more upgraded troops. I get an attack from the rear with some of my forces here. My cav also are going to be moving through the back. They're going to be landing some hammer and anvil strikes, as well as putting on pressure to his skirmishers. You can even see my slingers back there are putting on some shots onto his men that are otherwise engaged with mine and starting to outmaneuver them. So you can see his heroic nobles there are going to be exhausted, and yeah, I'm going to start chewing away at them with my more elite troops, and companion cav here are going to turn around, and some of them are going to start engaging his units here. Again, surprised that they did not do more damage than they had, but it does cause a little bit of a panic amongst his men, which is good for me. So, you know, his troops here are starting to crumble, and part of my swordsmen are returning, so I figure that's a good sign. Meanwhile, these guys are picking off his men who have an exposed flank here. And the cav fight is still kind of up in the air at this moment. I figure since I engaged spearmen into the mix, they would be able to turn the tide. So you can see here, routed to skirmishers, reinforcements coming back. It's looking relatively good. But then I come over here, and it turns out that his units here have dismounted. And what that does is all of a sudden, apparently, he's able to turn the tide on my most elite spearmen here. I was really surprised about that, but I guess that's the benefit you get of dismounting your troops, because then it's spearmen on spearmen and not spearmen on horsemen, so I don't get the additional advantage. Plus he has a lot of men there, so I guess I'm not too taken aback. At the same time, with all his troops here, he's able to destroy my cavalry. Still surprised by how many men he has remaining, even though I landed a flank attack on them, but oh well. I hear sometimes the battle replays do kind of mess with the numbers. You know, I figured since his troops are engaged here, I'll go ahead and put my slingers to tell him to attack his forces here, but he's going to go ahead and route that up. And it turns out his men, even though they were tired, they're able to crush through some of my units there. So I'm going to try and reform. And my strategy has worked, though. Look at his heroic nobles, and they're going to be exhausted. Some of my foot companions are routing, but the men that remain are in relatively good spirits. You can see my thorax spearmen are definitely they're definitely still looking good. My foot companions here, they're basically fresh, whereas all his troops that were previously engaged are going to be suffering from penalties from exhaustion and stuff like that. So the units on the left that are his are going to be heavily exhausted. Meanwhile, my remaining troops here are going to start putting on the hurt on his reforming forces on the right. So I'm going to tell my slingers to target his heroic nobles on foot. I figure I'm going to start off with the group at the end and put the pressure on them, and then start moving on to bigger groups. Some heroic nobles here that are exhausted, I'm going to charge through them with my companion cav, spear him through right there, so it's a nice charge on a weakened line. Yeah, because he has so many men over there, it's going to start turning the tide of battle, and my opponent is going to start to envelop me. So he has his main forces here. But keep in mind that all the while I've been able to reduce his men in terms of their exhaustion. So you can see all those guys there are not going to be super effective. At the same time, I have fresh troops here, and his units here are going to be coming under fire. And you'll see just as how many casualties actually they take as they start moving. And you'll see the effect that these incoming projectiles have actually on his morale is going to be pretty significant. But he's going to move up his cavalry on the right, try and ward my slingers off, but I do have foot companions there, and that's the last thing he wants to do at this point with his sort of fragile cavalry units, is send them into my spears. Although if he does choose to dismount as he did before, you know, he can negate the special bonuses that I would otherwise have against some cav. So you can see here I'm picking off his men, and they're down to 29, 27, so I've reduced at least half his unit right there. So I'm picking off his forces here. Even though he's trying to give his other forces time to recover, he decides that it's not worth it to take some shots and decides to engage here. So that's going to be one of the fronts where he's attacking. So I'm going to go ahead and send out my thorax swordsman. And I got to keep my foot companions facing his cavalry and his other force there. Some of his forces on the left have started to rout just because of their sheer exhaustion. So I figure I'm strong enough on that side. Foot companions are going to try and hold him off, whereas these guys are going to go ahead and chase off my skirmishers. I attack from the flank. And I'm able to get some hits at his men as they're retreating, and he's going to chase after my slingers because he figures if he can knock them out, then that's going to mean I can't harass him anymore, and he can kind of disengage and refresh his troops. But I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to chase after with my thorax swordsman, You can see here he's putting the hurt on my slingers, but you know, in return I'm able to spear some of his guys there, cut them through. All of a sudden the morale starts breaking, and that's when I know things are not going according to plan. So apparently when my slingers routed, it had a chain effect on the rest of my army, even though they were still in good health and good spirits. The combined effect of seeing the rest of the army flee basically does them in. So again, I'm a little surprised at some of the mechanics in the game. The charges I had with the cavalry on his cavalry in Shogun would have landed a victory. The spearmen I mixed in with the cavalry should have taken care of them. But, you know, I'm still learning, and I hope I can bring what I learned to you in the future. Thanks so much.